The cold, minimalist lines of the Ascendant Solutions headquarters offered no warmth to Arthur Bell. He sat rigidly on the uncomfortable ergonomic chair, his plain, neatly pressed tweed jacket a stark contrast to the charcoal and chrome of the boardroom. Across the polished mahogany table sat his son, Ethan Bell, the head of acquisitions, 32 years old, and radiating the aggressive confidence of a man who believed his executive success was entirely self-made. Ethan did not look up immediately from the printed CV, a single, concise page, that lay before him. He tapped a diamond-cut pen against the paper, a gesture Arthur immediately recognized as performative impatience. Two younger assistants sat behind Ethan, clearly meant to witness the manager's brutal efficiency. "Mr. Arthur," Ethan began, his voice amplified just enough to carry over the ambient office hum, "I appreciate you taking the time to come in, but honestly, this is a waste of both our bandwidths." Arthur, who had spent the last 2 weeks refining the plainly dressed applicant persona, blinked slowly. "I believe my experience with foundational infrastructure and long-term asset management is unique," he offered, his voice slightly rough, suggesting nervousness. Ethan finally looked up, his expression a practiced mask of condescending pity. "Unique, yes. Relevant, no. Your CV reads like a relic, Arthur. 2 decades in asset development. That's legacy. We are Ascendant Solutions. We deal in agility, disruptive integration, and cloud-based synergy." He leaned back, adjusting his designer shirt. "You don't even list proficiency in SaaS platforms or AI-driven workflow optimization. Your most recent listed skill is manual ledger reconciliation. Do you know what reconciliation means to us? It means we push a button on a dashboard." One of the assistants let out a quiet, forced chuckle. Ethan smiled, enjoying the validation. "I noted that the job description called for a manager who could identify and mentor emerging talent and ensure integrity across diverse data streams," Arthur pointed out. Ethan scoffed. "Integrity is automated. Mentoring is handled by our internal LMS. Look, Arthur, let me be frank. We need leaders who understand the future, not historians who romanticize the past. You seem like a nice enough guy, but you're fundamentally obsolete. Your skill set is a liability. It's too slow, too physical, too analog. Honestly, if this company were still running on your foundational methods, we wouldn't exist." Ethan pushed the CV across the table, a clear dismissal. "Thank you for the life lesson in what not to look for. We'll be moving on with candidates who can actually leverage digital transformation." He stood up, signaling the interview's end. As Ethan turned to address his assistants, Arthur's body language changed, instantly shedding the weight of the old man act. His posture straightened, and the rough tremor left his voice, replaced by a deep, resonant authority that cut through the office hum far more effectively than Ethan's loud tone. "Sit down, Ethan," Arthur said, quietly but firmly. Ethan paused, startled by the use of his first name and the sudden shift in atmosphere. He glanced at Arthur, irritation crossing his face. "Excuse me? The interview is over, Mr. Arthur. I suggest you collect your belongings." "I said sit down," Arthur repeated. He didn't raise his voice, but the sudden drop in temperature made the two nervous assistants suddenly look very ill at ease. Arthur reached into the inner pocket of his tweed jacket, which now seemed less like a relic and more like tailored armor. He did not pull out a document, but a single, heavy, matte black keycard, embossed not with the logo of Ascendant Solutions, but with the stylized original B of the Bell Family Trust. He slid the card across the polished table, where it stopped precisely in front of Ethan. Ethan stared at the card, his face draining of color as he recognized the logo, a symbol he had only seen on the foundational deeds of the company he believed he was running. His eyes snapped up to Arthur's. The man across the table was no longer a timid, irrelevant applicant. He was focused, sharp, and commanding, the version of his father Ethan hadn't seen in a decade, the man who had built this empire from scratch. "The test wasn't for the senior asset manager position," Arthur said, the silence in the room now deafening. "The test, Ethan, was for the CEO of Bell Holdings. The role you've been expecting to inherit," Ethan stammered, his polished executive facade cracking instantly. Dad, what what are you doing here? I thought you were retired. I was where I needed to be, Arthur finished coolly, listening, observing. I spent 2 weeks cycling through the final round of interviews for this key leadership role, and then I interviewed for a fictional position here just to see your process. Arthur leaned forward, his gaze cutting into his son's panicked eyes. I needed to see if, after all the buzzwords and the disruptive integration, you still possessed the ability to recognize value where it wasn't immediately obvious. I needed to know if you valued human capital, the people who built the foundation, or if you simply value the automated dashboard that gives you the credit. I mocked your experience, Dad, in front of the team, Ethan whispered, utterly mortified. Yes, you did. You publicly humiliated a man with decades of proven, reliable expertise, the expertise that still keeps the lights on in 80% of our infrastructure, because he didn't use the correct SaaS vocabulary, Arthur stated, his tone heavy with disappointment. You called your own father, the founder of this entire organization, obsolete because he was too slow, too physical, too analog. You measured integrity by a button push and discarded wisdom because it didn't look sleek enough. Arthur stood up, retrieved the keycard, and pocketed it. You failed, Ethan. Spectacularly. He glanced at the two young assistants, whose eyes were wide with terrified realization. The family business, Ethan, is not built on agility and synergy. It is built on trust, long-term vision, and the ability to look past the surface of things to the original physical truth you demonstrated today, that you are unable to do that. You discarded proven assets and disrespected foundational wisdom in pursuit of an ephemeral trend. He walked toward the boardroom door. You may keep your current title for now, but the CEO track is closed until further notice. You will spend the next year under my supervision, starting tomorrow morning, on the factory floor. You will learn what manual ledger reconciliation and foundational asset management really mean. When you can look at a person in a tweed jacket and see value instead of just a liability, then we can talk about the future. He paused at the door, turning back to his stunned son. And tell your team, Ethan, true leadership is never about the bandwidth. It's always about the depth.